All right, so we have our conscious mind, what we're thinking about, our preconscious mind, things that we're not really thinking about or working with right now but can be pulled up, and then the unconscious, where we have a whole bunch of stuff we're not really dealing with and maybe stuff that's kind of yucky that we don't want to think about. All right, so when we look at how personality is kind of put together, this is kind of what Freud talked about. He said that our personality has three divisions: the id, the superego, and the ego. And they all kind of control different things about us. So the id is completely unconscious. You can see it's just located in the unconscious part of our mind. The id is the most animalistic part of our personality, according to Freud. So the id is what kind of drives the things that keep us alive, right? So it's our give me food, give me shelter, give me water, give me sex to procreate, right? It's kind of do it because it feels good, all right? Keep me alive. I don't really care about consequences, right? I don't even know what consequences are. I'm your id. Rah, 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 id. So the id runs on what Freud called the pleasure principle, right? So it just says if it feels good, do it, pretty much. All right, so that's the one part of your personality. The next part of your personality is your superego. So your superego is mostly unconscious, but it is a little bit subconscious and conscious. So it's kind of goes through all three levels of consciousness. Your superego is like your conscience, right? It's what tells you what's good and bad, right from wrong. So where do you think your superego comes from? Do you think you're born with it? No, you're not born knowing right from wrong, right? Your superego comes from how you're raised. It comes from your parents, it comes from your culture, it comes from your society, it comes from your religion. All these things that teach you this is the right way to behave, this is the wrong way to behave. These are good things, these are bad things. Good people do this, bad people do this. These are the consequences of being good, these are the consequences for being bad. That's your superego, all right? So it's going to be telling you what you should or shouldn't be doing, right? And what thoughts you have are good, what thoughts you have are bad, things like that. So think of it as your conscience, right? So as you might be guessing, your id and your superego aren't friends, right? Because your id's saying do whatever the hell you want, who cares? And your superego's saying, oh no, we can't do that, that's wrong, that's bad. So devil on one shoulder, angel on the other, all right? So they're always fighting. I want to do this. No, you can't do this, but I want to do this. No, you can't do that. That's wrong. So the ego comes along. Now your ego is kind of half conscious, half preconscious. The ego's job is to balance out the id and the superego. Right? It's kind of the mediator between the two. The ego is going to listen to what the id has to say. It's going to listen to what the superego has to say, and then it's going to make a judgment based on what's best for you and what's best within the confines of reality. So the ego is based on what Freud called the reality principle. All right, so it's going to say, right now, here's what we actually can do. All right, so if the id is saying, food, 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 I want food, go get food, 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 food. And the superego is saying, no, 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 we cannot ever go outside because it's COVID and we're supposed to be locked down and you never get to have food again, right? We're not supposed to have food and food will kill you, blah, 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 blah. Right? Fight, 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 fight. The ego is going to step in and say, okay, here's reality. Right now, we do need to stay home, but we can order DoorDash, right? Or we can, go through a drive-through because food's still open. Here's a way we can make it happen where we're still obeying the orders of the law, we're still doing what's best for society, and we're still getting the, fatty food that the id would like us to have. All right, it's going to balance it out. That's the ego's job. So a good personality, according to Freud, is going to have a big ego. All right, which doesn't ever sound good, right? If you tell someone to have a big ego, it always seems like it's a bad thing to say. But from a Freudian perspective, a big ego is good. A nice, strong ego means that you are good at balancing out the needs of your id and the needs of your superego. Now, someone that has way too big of an id, is going to be a person who just always does whatever they want, doesn't care about consequences, doesn't care about who they hurt, doesn't care about breaking laws, right? That person's kind of a pain in the ass, right? People don't usually like that person. They might be fun for a little while, but You don't want to still be hanging out with them when you're 30. Someone who has too big of a superego, right? They're going to be like too much of like a goody two-shoes. They're never going to want to do anything. They'll be too much of a rule follower and just constantly like, oh, we can't ever do this and that's wrong and don't do this and blah, blah, right? Super buzzkill. So we don't want either one of these to be too big or to be taking over too much. We want our ego to be able to know how to balance that. And different personalities are going to have different amounts of ego, id, and superego. All right, so that's kind of the basics of how Freud says our personality is made up, right? Or adult personality. So we'll talk about how it grows here in a little bit. All right, so Freud talked a lot about defense mechanisms. So defense mechanisms are distortions of reality that we do in order to reduce anxiety. So Freud talked a lot about anxiety and that's kind of our main thing that we deal with as people. And that our main goal in life, or one of our main goals in life, is just to reduce anxiety, to not feel bad, right? We don't like feeling bad. And so in order to not feel bad about things, we are going to deploy these defense mechanisms. We're going to say, okay, this is how it's going to happen. Now, Freud believed these were unconscious. We don't consciously make a decision to use these. It's an unconscious way that we deal with anxiety. And everyone uses them. All right, so as we go through them, you're all going to identify some that you used. You're going to identify some that your parents use, your best friend use, whatever. You're going to be able to have fun with this. And your discussion this week has to do with defense mechanisms as well. All right, so the first one we're going to talk about is denial. Everyone knows what denial is, right? It's a refusal to acknowledge a threatening situation, right? I'm just going to deny it's happening at all, right? This thing happened? Nope, it's not. Not going to happen. If I don't acknowledge it happening, then I don't have to feel the stress or anxiety of it happening. So denial is usually our go-to defense mechanism when something first happens that would cause us anxiety. So the first thing we usually go into is boom, denial. All right, if you walked into a classroom and everyone had out a Scantron and a pencil, and you did not think there was a quiz or an exam that day, you would walk in and be like, wait, I must be in the wrong room for someone to deny that. Or no, there's not a quiz today. There's not a test today. This isn't test day. All right. You would go to denial first because you want to buy yourself 2 seconds of time where things don't suck yet. All right. So usually denial has to go away, right? You can't just live there. Now, sometimes denial can go for a much longer period of time, days, weeks, years, decades. Depends on what it is you're denying. All right. If it's a test you have to take, you can only deny that for so long, right? The teacher's handing the test out. You can't still be saying like, there's not a test today. It's obviously right in front of you. But, if, something, bigger is going on that doesn't actually require you to face it, you could stay in denial for a longer period of time. Like you're, I don't know, like my one of my best friends is gay and his parents kind of are in denial that he is gay, and they're just living in that little happy world of thinking that their son just has a roommate that he's been living with for many years and they have a child together, but they're still saying like, oh, he'll find a nice girl soon. No, he won't. He's quite happy with the nice boy he has. All right, so repression is when we refuse to consciously remember a threatening or unacceptable event. So repression is when we take something that was really kind of traumatic for us and we just kind of shove it down into our unconscious so that we don't have to deal with it. We're just like, pretty much our brain says to us, this sucks too much. We're just going to forget this event even ever occurred, and we're just going to shove, down. Repression is such an interesting defense mechanism. It's just crazy that our brain can do this. And we see this a lot in families where there's been like a lot of trauma and abuse, where sometimes one child will remember the abuse perfectly, and another child won't remember there being any abuse at all. Right? And, child number one will be like, you were there, you saw this happening to me. And the second child will be like, no, I didn't. No, I wasn't saying that. Like their brain was just like, this is horrible. I can't deal with it. Bye. And it just checks out. Now, sometimes your brain actually physically checks out, and we call that disassociation. But repression is kind of the precursor to that. It's when we kind of shove bad, horrible things like down inside of us. One time when I was a kid, I had some kind of weird skin disease that I'd gotten from like swimming in a bayou or something. I don't know, when I was on vacation. And I know that I had to get a really huge shot like right into my spinal cord. And I know it happened. And I remember going to the doctor and them telling me it was going to happen. But I have no memory of it actually happening. Now my mom remembers it, clearly, because you don't forget having to see your kid go through that. But I just, like, my brain was like, nope, this is horrible, bye, and just checked out. That memory is just kind of gone. It's been repressed. It's out of here. Now, could I maybe pull it up if I, had to think about it? It's in there somewhere, but my brain was like, no, no, no. So if you think about kids who are being, abused and, having bad things happen to them, sometimes your brain just represses that information because it's just too much for little tiny brains to deal with. And it does happen with children way more than adults. So in our final chapter, when we talk about multiple personalities, we're going to bring up repression again, because part of how multiple personalities work is by repression, where your brain, instead of kind of repressing a memory, will just repress your entire personality and form a new personality, which is super like, whoa, what? Your brain's insane. So we'll talk about that when we get to that in that chapter, but we'll just remember coming back to repression at one point. Rationalization is when we invent an acceptable excuse for unacceptable behavior. I guarantee every single one of you has used rationalization. You may have already used it today. Right? We rationalize that our behavior is okay, even when we know it's not. Right? Oh, I don't need to study. I'll be able to pass it, no problem. Right? Or it's okay if I did this because, right? If you've ever taken anything from a job that you're not supposed to, you always rationalize it, right? It's okay that I took this pen home because they have lots of pens, right? Now you're a thief, you stole something, but you don't want to think of yourself as that because we rationalize to make ourselves feel better. All right, you're going 90 down the tollway. Oh, it's okay. Now, are you breaking the law? Yes, you are, right? You are completely breaking the law right now, speeding down the tollway, which is easy to do right now because there's no one out. But we rationalize it. Well, there's no one out. Or, oh, everyone else is doing it, and that makes it okay, right? We find a way to excuse our bad behavior. That's rationalization. Try to go an entire day without rationalizing a single behavior or thought that you have. It's almost impossible. We do it constantly and all the time. It's one of the most used defense mechanisms across the board. All right, projection, which is one of my most favorite defense mechanisms. Not because I like to use projection, just because I love watching when other people use it. Because I'm just like, oh my God, you don't even know you're doing it. I love it. So projection is when unacceptable impulses are seen as originating in someone else. What does this mean? It means that instead of dealing with something that's your own issue, you instead decide it's someone else's issue. It's not me, it's you. I'm not the one with the problem, you're the one with the problem. I'm not the one that hates this, you're the one that hates this. I don't hate you, you hate me. So I don't have to deal with it inside of me. I can instead say it's because of you. You're the cause of all of this, instead of really looking at what's going on inside of what's happening with me. So, for example, I happen to know a professor who doesn't really enjoy being a professor. They would have liked to have done something else, but the degree that they have pretty much gives them two options. Option one did not work out for them. The only other option they pretty much had with their degree was to teach. And so every semester, this professor talks about how horrible their students are. Oh, my students are so horrible, they're so unprepared, they're just the worst students ever. And I finally just got super sick of hearing this. And I was like, listen, we all have the same students. And I don't think that they're horrible. I don't think that they're all unprepared. Like, are there bad students? Of course there are. But there's also wonderful students and regular sized students and all different kinds of students. But they're not all horrible. And there's no way that every semester all of your classes are just the horrible students. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And I know it's not, because I know we share students. I'm like, maybe, just maybe, students aren't the problem. It's that you're unhappy with the fact that you're doing something you don't want to be doing. And you're projecting that unhappiness onto them. So that person unfriended me on Facebook. And that's what you get when you're a psychologist, by the way, is when you do call people on their shit, they end up not liking you so much anymore. Womp womp. Maybe change over to a business degree. Just kidding. Stick with psychology, my 2 psychology majors. All right, reaction formation is when we do the opposite emotional or behavioral reaction to the way we actually feel. Because the way we actually feel causes us anxiety. I don't like the way it feels for me to have this feeling, this emotion. So instead, I'm going to act in the opposite way. All right. When a little boy, chases a girl or hits her, we're always like, oh, it's because he likes you, which is just the absolute worst thing to tell anybody. Yes, girls, that's right. Boys hurt you to show their love. No, they don't. It's horrible. But from the little boy maybe is feeling like, oh, I do like this little girl. I kind of want to hold her hand maybe, or stand next to her in line. But ew, girls are supposed to be gross. I'm not supposed to like her, so I'm going to push her, and that'll be, then no one will know I like her. Right? Bad. We should not be teaching that to any child, but that's kind of what's going on in their little, sad little boy mind. Someone's gay. They're having gay feelings, or they've seen a boy and being like, hey, I'm a boy and I like the looks of that boy over there. Ha ha ha. But I've been taught my whole life that being gay is bad and being gay is wrong and being gay is a sin. So I may do the opposite behavior and really go for girls and be like, yeah, I like boobs and girls and pussy. Yeah, girls, home of the girls. In hopes that by doing that behavior, I can kind of push away my actual thoughts and feelings, which is I'd rather be with boys. Okay, that's reaction formation. Displacement is when we redirect feelings from a threatening target to a less threatening one. Now, displacement can be a good, healthy defense mechanism, or it can be a really unhealthy defense mechanism. It depends on how you use it. All right, so let's say your boss really sucks and you don't like your boss, right? Your boss is yelling at you all the time and telling you how much you're the worst employee, I should fire you, blah, blah, blah. And you really want to punch your boss in the face. But you can't punch your boss in the face, because if you did that, you get fired and you'd probably end up in jail. And you don't want to do that. So you need to displace those feelings. Now, an unhealthy way to displace those feelings would be to go home and kick your dog, right? Well, I can't kick my boss, but I can kick my dog. Unhealthy displacement. A healthy way to use displacement might be to go to the gym, right? And, work on a speed bag or something, right? I'm going to take this anger, I'm going to put it somewhere else because I can't put it where I want to put it. So instead, I'm going to displace it. So it can be a healthy way to deal with, some anxiety, but you also kind of have to make sure you're doing it in a healthy way, because there is very unhealthy ways to use displacement as well.